So now that Thor Love and Thunder is in our rearview mirrors, it's time to forge ahead, and the question inevitably becomes, who's left for Thor to fight?
This is crazy, I don't want to hurt you.
I mean, he's already fought most of his main rogues gallery, right? Well, actually wrong. There's a ton of bad guys Thor could face in Thor 5, and today I wanted to run down some of the best options and why they make sense for Thor's current arc. Could he fight Galactus, Enchantress, an evil version of Odin? There's a lot of options. Let's get started right now.
You are an old man and a fool!
So let's start with one of the big ones, and by big, I mean literally big. Galactus is the devourer of worlds and one of the last big Marvel villains yet to be introduced in the MCU. It's unclear as of now if we'll ever get to see Galactus portrayed in all his purple glory, but it's probably likely, right? The Fantastic Four are coming, and seeing as Galactus has been one of their main villains, it would make sense to introduce him to be their antagonist. But also, with that in mind, Galactus isn't just a Fantastic Four villain. He's an everyone villain, and that's why I think it would be better for Thor to fight Galactus in some capacity first as a way to set the baddie up for more adventures in the MCU. Because the way I see it, Thor is part of the old guard of heroes.
Strongest Avenger.
Access denied.
Strongest Avenger.
Access denied.
Mostly everyone seems to have retired, passed the mantle to someone else, or died. It makes Thor the practical cornerstone of the MCU, and you can use him as a character to launch the big events. So that's why Thor encountering Galactus would make sense. Then, with Thor recognizing that Galactus is a massive galactic threat, Thor could be the one to go to Earth, recruit the Avengers team, and form a united front and a plan in order to stop the Purple Planet Eater. Or if we want to continue the threat that we've seen in the last Thor movie, it's established that most of the gods have become wrathful, selfish, and arrogant, and Love and Thunder ends with Zeus declaring that people worship heroes more than gods and wants to set things straight. Maybe the reason Galactus hasn't appeared yet, besides rights issues, is because things have been in balance, sorta, in the universe. Now that Thor has angered Zeus and will be hunted by the gods, that could awaken Galactus to even everything out. It's not perfect, and I don't know how that fits into Phase 5 and 6, but again, it just puts Galactus against one of our strongest heroes, and if Galactus could hurt Thor in some way, we would know just how strong he can be. Alright, Galactus is cool and all, but what if I want to go even bigger? What if, to really capitalize on the whole multiverse aspect of the MCU, Thor ends up fighting Black Winter? Basically, Black Winter is like Galactus, only on a much larger scale. Instead of devouring planets, Black Winter devours entire universes. This multiversal cosmic entity is the thing that ended up devouring the 6th iteration of the cosmos, which led to Galen of Ta becoming Galactus, as he was the only survivor of that universe and carried over to the next one. Now, there's a really interesting comic storyline that sees Black Winter causing trouble for our universe and for Galactus, and the two get into a fight. Galactus is wounded and winds up on Asgard, where he makes Thor his herald, and the two team up in order to stop Black Winter. Isn't that wild? And I think there's a way to work this into the MCU. So, revisiting my idea of Galactus arriving due to the events of Love and Thunder, what if Thor, rather than fighting Galactus, asks for his help at first in order to fight against gods in the next movie? It would make sense that Thor would have to team up with someone who could take on gods, and Galactus fits that bill rather well. So Galactus could help Thor with the gods, but it could result in Thor becoming Galactus's herald, and Galactus using Thor to help fight his own problem, which is the Black Winter. All of that would work in tying Thor's current films and arcs into the overall multiversal story. Plus, Thor has proven time and time again that he's one of the strongest beings in the whole universe, which means finding people who pose a threat to him are very rare.
Bring me Thanos!
A huge multiversal cosmic entity that destroys entire universes definitely feels like a big enough threat to the God of Thunder. So something that I've touched upon in the previous 2 entries but want to reiterate here is that I really hope Thor 5 continues with the theme established in Love and Thunder, that gods are awful and a huge reform of some kind needs to happen. I didn't think that was handled particularly well in Love and Thunder, but a lot of my critiques would disappear if the next movie actually acts as a continuation of that, rather than putting Thor on another new adventure. And I think a way to really do that is to introduce Perrikus and the Dark Gods. The Dark dark gods are opposites of Asgardians, and Perrikus himself is the god of power unlimited, so you know he's a big deal. Most of Perrikus and his dark gods storylines include trying to take over Asgard, but I think Love and Thunder laid the groundwork for the group to resurface now. Thor 5 could be Thor trying to help the gods get back on track and be good again, but Perrikus and his rogue group could be actively fighting against it. I like the idea of a different god being the villain of Thor 5, as it would give Thor Ragnarok, Thor Love and Thunder, and Thor 5 a really great 3-movie arc for the Thor character. Plus, with Perrikus comes a group of dark gods, and that means everyone could have someone to fight. It was a little lame that Valkyrie had to stay behind in the final battle of Love and Thunder, but you have to think that it was for story reasons. It's not like Valkyrie would be the one to take down Gorr. So Thor 5 could introduce a series of villains and dark gods and then make it so that Thor, Love, Valkyrie, and Korg all have someone they could fight. Or if we want to have Thor face a god, then why not Ares?
I need anything, I will end you with my bare hands.
This could actually be a better continuation of what the mid-credit scene established from Love and Thunder. So, the mid-credit scene featured Zeus talking to his son Hercules, remarkably cast with Ted Lasso's Brett Goldstein, and Hercules agreeing to hunt down Thor for his father. Now, anyone who knows Hercules in the Marvel Comics knows that yes, Hercules and Thor have a fun rivalry and have fought a lot over the years. But Hercules is actually a hero and has even been an important member of the Avengers. It feels like with all the history surrounding the character, it would be a little bit disappointing if he was just a one-off bad guy for the next movie. No, what would be better is if Thor 5 initially pits the Greek gods against Thor and his friends, with Hercules leading the charge. But over the course of the movie, Hercules realizes that Thor isn't the enemy that his father is making him out to be, and that Thor is actually right in that the gods need to be better and not just worry about the yearly orgy. This could lead to Hercules switching sides, making way for Ares to be the true big bad of that movie. And here's why that's so clever. Hercules and Ares are brothers, which means Thor could take part in a story where two powerful god brothers see things differently and fight it out. It could be a direct parallel to what Thor went through with Loki. Wouldn't that be a cool parallel? That's why I would love to see Ares be the bad guy in the next movie.
Loki! Turn off the Tesseract or I'll destroy it.
You can't. There is no stopping it.
Okay, I've been talking about larger-than-life entities and other gods for Thor to face, but for these next few entries, I want to go back to the series' roots. Thor seems to be at his best when he's fighting family. I mean, Loki is an all-time great MCU villain, and Hela was pretty solid. That tells me that maybe we should dig up another family member for Thor to fight. Well, in that case, let's talk about Cul Borson. Cul Borson is Odin's brother, so he's Thor's uncle. He's nicknamed the Serpent and is the god of fear. He's like all three of Odin's children rolled into one. He's great with magic like Loki, he's an excellent warrior like Thor, and he has that whole I want to conquer and rule Asgard thing that Hela liked.
Submit to me, brother. Never!
He can also turn himself into a giant serpent, so his nickname of the Serpent definitely tracks. In the comics, Borson was imprisoned for thousands of years by Odin and eventually was released and caused a ton of mayhem. There's one storyline where Odin had pardoned Cul and made him Asgard's Minister of Justice. When Jane Foster's Mighty Thor showed up, Odin tasked Cul with retrieving Mjolnir, and the Dark God took over the Destroyer's body in order to fight Jane. So I think his inclusion in Thor 5 could be relatively easy. Let's say that Zeus, in his quest to capture or eliminate Thor, releases Cul from a prison the Greek gods are holding him in, and he becomes Zeus's Asgardian advisor. He doesn't have to be the main bad guy, as his power allow him to be the secondary henchman if that's what the movie requires. Either way, he'd cause a massive headache for Team Thor. So Cul Borson is known as the Serpent and can turn into a giant snake, but he's not the only giant snake that can cause Thor pain, if you'd believe it. There's also Jormungandr, aka the Midgard Serpent, and its backstory is strange to say the least.
That would be...
The Midgard Serpent. The end of all things.
The Midgard serpent is actually Loki's son that he had with a sorceress, Angerboda, and because of both Loki and Angerboda's frost giant genetics, their children were the Jormungandr serpent and the Fenris wolf. Since we've seen the Fenris wolf in Thor Ragnarok, chances are that they wouldn't follow through with this plotline. But that doesn't mean you can't still have Jormungandr around to cause chaos. Because when I say big snake, I mean a really big snake. At its full size, the monster could encircle an entire planet. Yeah, you think that's a big enough threat for Thor to face? What's cool about this is that there was a prophecy that stated that Thor would kill the Midgard serpent, but the god of thunder would die as a result of its venom. I think having this storyline in the MCU would be interesting because I think before Love and Thunder, if Thor knew he was prophesied to die, he wouldn't care. But now that he has a new daughter to take care of, he'd have to grapple with the idea of beating fate. That's a cool storyline, right? Thor has fought family before, so why don't we get a little strange with things and make Odin the big bad for Thor 5? If the 5th Thor does not want to focus on an all-out god war, then I think a more personal story would be interesting. After all, Thor specifically wanted to go on bigger, more fun adventures, so why not thrust him into chaos? So the Odin we met in the MCU is maybe a little stern, but he also seems like a kindly leader who cares for his people and Asgard. What we find out though, especially in Ragnarok, is that Odin had a long history as a tyrant and conquered the 9 realms with a ton of bloodshed and violence. Yeah, he wasn't as benevolent as we thought, and I just think there's so much of Asgard's history that's left unexplored, and we can't really learn about it now since Asgard has been reduced to a pile of space rocks. So what if Thor found himself on an adventure that sees him traveling back in time to when Odin was a tyrant, and Asgardians were the most feared beings in existence? So Thor would have to face his father in an epic showdown. Maybe in a fun time travel twist, Thor could be the one who helps convince Odin to not be a tyrant anymore. But that wouldn't really work with the rules that Endgame established with time travel, so how about instead Thor gets transported to a different universe where Odin is still a tyrant? I think that would not only be an excellent action-packed adventure, but also a strong character movie for Thor. Alright, so in the original Civil War comic storyline, Thor is deceased at the time, so Tony uses a strand of the Asgardian's hair to make a part clone, part cyborg version of the God of Thunder, and eventually this character goes rogue and turns evil and all that jazz. Because, you know, of course it does, Tony. Thor eventually faces this clone of himself and easily beats it. And when Thor takes his mantle back, the clone starts calling himself Ragnarok. Now, they couldn't do the exact comic storyline, but I think I found a fun way to adapt this. How hilarious would it be if Thor had to face a clone of himself, but it's a clone that acts like Thor 1 and 2 Thor, and not Thor Ragnarok and Love and Thunder Thor? It not only would be just a great gag to see Chris Hemsworth return to the Shakespearean version of the character he first started in the MCU, but also to see that version act opposite of the sillier, goofier version we have now. I think if anyone could pull that type of storyline off, it's Taika Waititi and Chris Hemsworth. So Mangog is a villain that I think should have already been introduced. Mangog is the physical manifestation of the hatred of a billion beings that Asgard ended up slaughtering in the past. So basically, he's a big rage monster. So now imagine in Thor Ragnarok, where instead of the Fenris wolf, Hela resurrected Mangog instead to be her giant creature. That way, at the end, Hulk, who is also a giant rage monster, would have had an equal enemy to fight. I mean, yeah, Fenris was cool, but I just think it would have been better for Hulk's character if he was able to fight Mangog instead. But I guess the bright side is that Mangog can now show up in Thor 5. Thor fighting people is fun, but there's something about watching Thor fight snarling, angry beasts that's exciting and thrilling. Mangog I don't think is main villain potential, but he's certainly a challenging henchman.
We're not making a dent!
Thor is a warrior and a fighter. He likes to hit things with his fists and weapons to win battles. That's a whole plot point in Love and Thunder, as how he sees himself as just a weapon to be called on in battle. And that makes the ending where he beats Gorr by mainly using words to help convince Gorr not to wipe out all the gods so poignant. I hope they continue that trend by giving Thor a different type of enemy to fight in Thor 5 that isn't just a strong fighter opponent. That's where Enchantress can come in.
Enchantress, I'll see that you're locked in the deepest dungeons of Asgard.
She's a character that uses her magic to seduce creatures into doing her bidding, and that's a whole new type of dangerous threat for Thor to face. That doesn't have a solution, you can just punch. The only issue really is that Enchantress's design seems very similar to Hela, so the character would have to go through a radical shift. But hey, I trust the MCU team with any changes they want to make. A fun villain that's pretty strong that we haven't seen yet is Bloodaxe. I know, what a great name. Bloodaxe is the type of villain Taika Waititi would have a lot of fun with, but I guess their backstory would have to be tweaked. In the comics, Bloodaxe was a mysterious, hulking mass of a villain that was granted powers thanks to Scourge the Executioner's magic axe. The twist of the story was that the real identity of Bloodaxe was a woman named Jackie Lucas. So it's kind of like an inverted version of the whole Mighty Thor mystery, so they can't exactly replicate that. But still, have a powerful, strong villain named Bloodaxe who looks like Red Skull joined a biker gang would be a real treat to see. I think the character designs for Hela and Gorr have been excellent, and I trust that the costume team could make something wickedly sinister for Bloodaxe while fighting Thor. The great thing about Thor is that he can fit in any environment. He's a great character to travel around different planets and encounter new alien species and monsters. That's where Ulik comes in. Ulik is the most powerful rock troll who lived within the caverns of Asgard with his clan. He's fierce, he's beefy, he's big, and has gotten into a few scraps with Thor. There was even a time where he made a duplicate of Thor's hammer and fought him with it. Come on, now that's a strong villain that would be fun, right? But also, maybe Ulik doesn't have to be a Thor villain per se, because you hear giant rock troll and you know who you think of? That's right, Korg.
My name is Korg. I'm kind of like the leader in here. I'm made of rocks, as you can see, but don't let that intimidate you.
Ulik would be a great baddie for Korg to fight. They are both rock related, and it would be a true character arc for Korg since he chickened out against that online troll in Endgame. See? Character development. Do you think we could see the return of any previous villain in the Thor franchise? I feel like a Thor and Loki reunion is required sometime down the line, and maybe they could redeem Malekith and give him something interesting to do? Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching CBR.